Welcome to the Straits Times Reset 2021 webinar. For today's webinar, we are covering a topic that's close to the hearts of workers and employers, the job losses and opportunities for next year. I have in the studio two guests that really need no introduction. The first guest is Mr. Ng Chee Meng, the Secretary General of NTUC. NTUC is at the forefront of the fight to save workers' jobs this year. They've put many schemes in place, working at the union at the national level, and Mr. Ng is at the forefront of this fight. Also in the studio is Dr. Robert Yap.
Hello.
Thank you for coming. Dr. Yap is the president of the Singapore National Employers Federation. The employers body has more than 3,300 members, and all the members have bore the brunt of the impact of the COVID pandemic. Thank you, Dr. Yap, for coming.
Thank you very much.
Can I invite Secretary General to make some remarks?
Well, 2020 has been a very tough year, and I think all of us are looking forward to 2021 to be a better year. In the midst of 2020, many things have happened, and for my role as Secretary General in NTUC, a key task was really to see how we can position workers to cope with all the different challenges, and at the same time partner with businesses to ensure the ecosystem is robust to deal with the challenges COVID-19 brought. So in terms of job support, in terms of job matching, job advocacy, job creation and job training, what we term as a SMART strategy, we pushed this to the ground, to our union leaders, to be able to have a simple strategy to work with our partner employers to make sure that the ecosystem can be as resilient as possible. So far, we think we have worked reasonably well. If your audience is keen for this, we can elaborate on some of these 5 aspects: support, matching, advocacy, creation and training, how it looks back into an ecosystem to support workers. And of course, come 2021, the world will continue to change, businesses will continue to evolve, we will continue as NTUC to innovate so that we will not only deal with the issues that will arise in 2021, but also keep an eye on our strategy to support Industry 4.0, to evolve our workers, whether you are PME or rank and file, to future-proof yourselves beyond 2021, so that when our Singapore economy progresses, our workers will be in a good state to be able to seize new opportunities together with our partners.
Thank you, Sec Gen. In case readers or viewers may not know, even just last week, NTUC expanded its protection for workers. It set up 2 new associations,
right.
One for creative content producers and the other for delivery riders.
That's right.
So this is an example of how even during this difficult time, as you've described, you continue to expand your coverage and your protection of workers.
That's right.
So thank you, Sec Gen. Let me invite Dr. Yap to make some comments with regards to how what has been the difficulties employer body like you face this year.
Well, we all know that this COVID-19 is really unprecedented. So there are a lot of huge challenges, not just to lives, but also to livelihoods, right? Which I think my brother Chee Meng has alluded to. From the employer's viewpoint, right? I think there's a lot of things that employers have to be contending with. Right? One, of course, is the cost of doing business. I think very important. And besides the cost of doing business, when your revenue get cut off, you're actually under very strong challenges. So what do you do as an employer? So SNAF represents 3,000 over members, right? And in various sectors or in different sectors. So some sectors are holding a bit better. Some sectors are totally actually down in the doldrums. So the government schemes, I think like GSS, JGI, the job growth incentive, so on, actually has helped, right, employers to be a bit more positive and then carry on employing. I think this is something that we want, right, to ensure that the employers remain positive and also give the opportunities for them to be able to work with the unions, with the workers, to be able to reskill and upskill them so that when the growth come back, I think we are able to take advantage of it. So I think this is very important part of it. SNAF rides on basically what we call responsible employer and sustainable business. Right? So these two things are really what drives the entire federation to ensure that our employers remain relevant, remain sustainable, and able to also harness all the various grants, schemes that the government has put in place to help businesses, which are actually very important. I think the government has done a lot during this year, as been shown. Obviously, we are hoping that more could be done to help the businesses, but the most important thing is to look at the situation, right? So we have the vaccines coming. We have improving business climate, right? So I think it's opening up, but we cannot be complacent, right? Singapore is very dependent on overseas. So even we have zero in our own community, but we have to connect with everybody else. So you got to make sure that the world economies, borders are different countries are also actually experiencing that kind of a safe situation for us to actually connect freely. Yeah.
Dr. Yap, thank you for painting the big picture for us. Maybe I should start the discussion. Before we look forward to 2021, I'll start the discussion with a bit of look back to this year. Of course, everyone says this year has been a horrible year. So the question I have for both gentlemen are, what are some of the major things you have done, NTUC and SNAF, the major things you've done to respond to the pandemic this year?
Well, I think the first thing that Robert mentioned was the job support scheme. NTUC had a pivotal role in that when the circuit, just before the circuit breaker, when we noticed that at the very front end of it, taxi drivers were coming to me to tell me that their incomes had plummeted. And we started noticing that other sectors were having somewhat of a domino effect until the circuit breaker just put a stop to many economic activities. So when I was in cabinet, I was able to communicate with DPM. He is still the finance minister, how the situation is evolving very quickly on the ground. We feedback from Robert and other business friends. We put together the job support scheme in double quick time. I think that scheme, we all know intellectually that it is very, very useful. But I must tell you that even now, with the unemployment rate that is about slightly less than 4% now, this JSS has been pivotal in actually holding many jobs while providing support to employers' cash flow. I think that's one. Two, the other thing key that NTUC participated in is the National Jobs Council, chaired by SM Tharman. Again, this is something that we work very closely with the government because of our own Job Security Council that we put forward earlier part of 2020 to help displaced workers, not specifically for COVID, but looking at the general outlook in the next 5 years. We thought many of the upskilling roles, how to train, how to match was important. We positioned it as a pilot in January, but by March, we went full-fledged to bring the Job Security Council run by E2I into society to match workers. That actually helped in the second arena where there were displaced workers. Let's say SQ stewardess and stewards, pilots. We were able to do it double quick time to match workers into new jobs. Up to date, about 25,000. And then participate with government to create the SG United, 100,000 jobs. Our social enterprises participated in this. In fact, our NTUC FairPrice took in many workers from different sectors to augment employment. And now the third part of it is on the recovery phase. How do we look at segments of vulnerable workers, what we call job advocacy, whether it's a low-wage worker, how can we apply PWM, whether it is freelancer that you just mentioned, how to look into associations to represent them as a group so that they have better bargaining power, better welfare, and hopefully in the future, if they stay in the job, better work prospects, or if they get back into their professions, how to match them in. These JGI initiatives, all these are things that we are plugging in very deeply. And importantly, for many of the ST readers, we are also looking at a PME task force, understanding the new needs of even the PME class. How can NTUC, in partnership with SNAF, see how we can take in the views of PMEs, how we can work potential policies and recommend to government next year so that we can really answer to all segments of society. So again, the smart strategy, this advocacy is a key part of it looking forward. Working with our workers, PMEs or rank and file to innovate our own views, our own policies as NTUC, and perhaps with government as well.
So as a labour reporter, right, I've never seen NTUC so busy within a 1 year window as compared with this year.
Yeah,
and I think the demands on not just employers but on union leaders must have been tremendous. What are some of the things that union leaders have done to in this very difficult year?
Well,
at the ground level.
It will be very difficult to summarize because it's such a wide range, ranging from one potential industrial action with an aviation company, all the way down to supporting distressed workers, being a friend, helping with family level assistance, care issues, children's school issues, affordability issues, the whole spectrum. Yong Chuan, we have done it. And well, if my white hair is an indicator, well, some have commented that my hair have grown whiter in the last year. Probably so.
Let me come to Dr. Yap.
Yes.
So again, we say this year has been a horrible year. What has it been like for employers? What are some of the things you are coming out from the ground from your members?
Yeah. Talking about white hair, I think I got more white hair.
We have been more stressed.
So I think for the employer side, actually, quite a lot has been done in the area of actually preparing them. All right. So I think we have a lot of schemes like the professional conversion program is actually one very interesting program that a lot of companies make use of it to be able to transform, right, basically their workers, reskill them, upskill them. Today, I think one of the biggest problems is that digitalization is something that we all realize that if we had been on it earlier, I think you will not suffer as much. So everybody, regardless of the industry you're in, realize that. So we are making use of the momentum to push digitalization as a very strong learning, right? That all companies should embrace digitalization so that you will not be so badly hurt, right? Because, for example, in the retail sector, even F&B sector, if you have the online selling channel, then you are actually not as badly hurt, right, when the offline is down. So the O2O strategy of helping our companies to be able to move there is one of the big initiatives we are doing. SNAP also push what we call the retail transformation. Retail transformation project is not about retailers alone. It's actually about the entire ecosystem, the entire value chain. Right? So you have mall owners, you have retailers, you have brand owners, you have fulfillment companies like ourselves. I run a fulfillment company like YCH, and also tech enablers. Right? So you have all those kind of a different horizontal that actually along the entire vertical, the whole ecosystem need to be transformed together. You cannot just transform only one sector. So this is very important, and we do that by actually working together between SNAF, right, our Sapphire agency, for training and skills upgrading. We actually work with the Singapore Retailers Association, and also with Scala, one of the logistic and supply chain academy that I'm actually very fondly involved in. And we are driving this together to actually help transformation. So you're talking about a whole chain of workers, thousands of them in that sector itself that need to be transformed. Then come the concept of what we call Queen Bee, right? So how do you get people to be able to champion that? Okay. Because on this transformation, you need actually companies to come forward to be able to say, okay, I will be the first to move. I will take representing my each sector to be able to train, reskill, and upskill these people. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Yap. So now that we've looked back at this year, so one question that that readers and viewers have asked is, how long will this difficulty last? I mean, what is like this? Of course, is a painful period. How long more do we have to bear the pain? Do we have to tahan? Do we have to bite the bullet and press on?
Well, it depends. Really, it depends on what sector a person is looking at.
Yep.
So, in the aviation sector, which is a most challenged sector, the most pessimistic from an engine maker, it tells me 4 to 5 years. From the most pessimistic to the more optimistic about 2 to 3 years. So things are changing very fast. On 1 week, you got good news about vaccinations, which will push the recovery of travel. But in the next week, we have new strains of COVID-19 that may well bring in new challenges. So my answer really depends on how the health situation develops, how the local and global situation develops as well. So locally, we are very happy to see that in many parts of our economy having a recovery. In a few sectors like aviation, aerospace, hotel, tourism, still on a downward challenge phase of recovery. So it depends on which aspect of the economy we're going to look at. But if you summarize as a whole, well, I think there is space for some optimism in 2021. I think the overall economy will recover compared to a very low base, of course, 5 to 6% likelihood. So generally, most workers, most businesses will see uptick. Yep. The sectors that I mentioned will probably continue to face challenges. And then we must also then, from the shores of Singapore, look outwards. If the gateways are open for us to travel both ways, businesses, trade can pick up, then you will have an even brighter spark. But all these are contingent of the many issues that are happening in the Western world. In England, in London now, people are discouraged from going out of London. In the US, Los Angeles has the highest spike, number 2 city in the US now, 3,000 deaths a day. So, well, we project week by week. With a long view towards recovery. It will be overcome, I'm sure. Personally, I think towards the end of 2021, hopefully without major changes in the health situation, we will have a better outlook.
Dr. Yap, is that also the sentiment of your members in SNEF?
Yeah, I think the uncertainties are still there, but I think the good news is that the business has moved from survival mode to sustainable mode. So we're looking at sustainability, right? How to actually carry on and wait for the tide to turn. Right? And some of these things are not totally dependent on ourselves, depending on the world situation, depending on our borders, how fast we open up.
Okay. This survival sustainability board is quite interesting. Can you elaborate on what are the mindset or what the pressures employers face in these two different modes?
Yeah. You see, when we were actually in the beginning, right, of this COVID situation, CB and all that, companies are looking desperately at way to survive, right? Firstly, I think it hits you. It's unprecedented. Suddenly, you cannot do that. Your business revenue is down, and you want to maintain your business operation to continue. I think that's one big challenge, right? With the JSSS scheme and the JGI and a lot of the government schemes that come in to help businesses to stay afloat, I think that has been able to help us to tide over this what we call recovery mode, right? So now we are in the case, but then how do you keep business from sustaining? So we need, as employers and also unions and also government, to make sure that we are able to project the kind of a positive attitude for our businesses, for our workers at the same time, to ensure, because this will recover, it's just a matter of time. So time is the only thing that we don't know when, right? But we know we just have to be prepared. So when the time comes in, we must be able to take advantage of it. So Singapore do have an advantage because we are actually doing quite a number of things correctly compared to the region. And this could be a competitive advantage as we recover.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely right, no? Robert is absolutely right. On the first 3 months to maybe August, September, I work with the companies. It's all about holding on to cash, ensuring cash flow, working with us how to help workers either move to other jobs on secondment basis, working with the unions to cut costs, to save jobs, where there's no pay leave, shorter work week. All those were the center of the universe in the first 3 months of all our activities. I was helping to keep companies alive so that my workers are employed. Then in the last few months, I think it has shifted almost subtly into how can we look at sustaining and looking for new opportunities.
Yep.
More companies now are coming on board together with the unions, including 200 SMEs we've unionized. Quite ironic in the last 3 or 4 months, because we put forward programs together with the business employers, how do you change your business model? How can NTUC help you with the operations and technology road mapping, and then put in the training programs with you, assessing government grants. So I was very, very pleasantly surprised that 200 SMEs came on board with NTUC in the last few months to really see how they can pivot. We have spoken much about ITMs, industry transformation maps, right? And ironically, when we have a burning platform called COVID-19, companies that had no time for digitalization now is actually stepping up their programs, working with us, working with government to see how they can launch into opportunities in 2021. Are there challenges? Yes. But things in some sectors are looking brighter.
What will you say to the viewer, whether is it workers or employers? So because it's a difficult year, workers have lost their jobs, companies have folded. So what do you say to the view that if they survive this year, the chances of surviving beyond this year is actually pretty good, be it a worker or a company?
Right.
What would you say to this view?
Well, I wouldn't say that you will be good unless you really adopt a different mindset. You must adapt to the different challenges, and you must act upon those convictions to move. Because to be absolutely honest, many people ask me, how can we help? How can we do this and do that for you? Well, whether you're an employer or a worker, first step is that you must help yourself. Accept that the world has changed. Adopt to new situations and take action. If you're an employer, well, partner NTUC or SNEF together. Anyway, we are working together very closely. How can you rethink about your business model? What are the government grants that can be utilized? And for a worker, how can you take personal responsibility regardless of how the circumstances may be? You are busy with this, with all the different responsibilities. How can you carve out a time? Let NTUC partner you into some levels of upskilling, pivot if the industry is challenged into other industries, or if you're in the specific industry, you think that it has growth, deepen your skills there so that you can future-proof yourself. So in the ecosystem that Robert and I have been working on, we call it Queen Bee concept. How can we actually look beyond individuals, look beyond just a company, but into clustering capabilities, so that we don't use yesterday's business models for tomorrow. Right. It is not just about digitalization. It's like what we Chinese, or in Singapore we all know, chopsticks. You know, you can break a single chopstick, but we band together is strength. And it's not just strength that we're looking for, but opportunities to hunt in the pack. How can we rethink the business model so that we grow the Singapore economy, help our businesses thrive, not just survive and sustain. And importantly then, when the Singapore economy is good, employers are making money, I can do my job as Secretary General to provide better wages, better welfare, and importantly for Singaporeans, better work prospects for the future. Critical.
What would you say to this view that as a company, if you can survive this year, you've survived this year, you're able to survive beyond this year?
Yeah. You see, we work very closely, right? Bala Chimi and I think we actually look at the entire situation in a holistic way. We don't look at good for labor and then or good for employees. We good for everybody. I think it's very important. So one of the key things for this transformation is that the workers' mindset must remain open. Right? They must be flexible, adaptable, right? So that we can teach them new skills, we can upskill them, we can reskill them, so that they can be very relevant, right, for the future. I think that's one important stage. But at the same time, driving the employers group, I think we are important to see how businesses must transform. So we mentioned about digitalization. So today, I think the good news is that actually now everybody realizes it's very important. Everybody wish they have done it earlier. So when we are pushing like the ITM, I think the 23 ITM maps that we are pushing, at that point, transformation actually has been moving, but not as quickly as what it should have. But this actually have accelerated today, which is a good sign. That means we're transforming businesses quickly, right, to digitalization. Secondly, I think workplace transformation is one other thing. So a lot of the companies now, we are encouraging them, we are coaching them, we are looking at how to help them transform workplaces that are age-friendly, so the older workers remain relevant, right, that are able also to absorb people that are prepared to be retrained, right, into that organization. So that is actually job provision that we are actually creating, helping companies to be able to do that. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about.
Would you like me to elaborate on another example? He gave you the retail.
Okay, please go ahead.
Waste management.
Okay.
It's a non-sexy sector, isn't it? Waste management. When NTUC partner with one company to do what we have just described, changing business model, digitalizing, and helping the company attract Singaporeans to waste management, which is a tall order, isn't it? But when we actually got into the details of operations and technology road mapping, this second generation SME Tauke, she was impressed and she took on the whole project together with my E2I and my Batu unions, actually developed a whole program, and we intend to put it into the PWM. From one company's work together with NTUC, now the whole cluster of 17 companies are looking at waste management 4.0. How to make a traditional non-sexy business that Singaporeans usually shun. And because, of course, the companies have interest too, right? They can't get Singaporeans to join, then they approach NTUC. Now we merge the interests of both the worker and the companies, see how we can change the business model, make career propositions for Singaporeans, change the waste management ecosystem. So this is another one example that we not only advocate for lower wage workers, senior workers that Robert mentioned, but develop an essential sector that Singaporeans hopefully can have meaningful careers in, so that we can provide essential service, we can have viable careers, and the business owners can have reasonable business in this area. Otherwise, if you don't have this tripartite arrangement to work this, then, well, eventually, I don't know what will happen, you know, in just rubbish clearing, all the different essential things that we all often take for granted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we spend some time discussing in some detail about this industry transformation, digitalization? What does it mean for jobs with regards for prospects, jobs for Singaporeans beyond the two sectors that you mentioned, retail and waste management? So all these things that employers, NTUC and the government are doing, what does it mean for Singaporeans? What kind of jobs can they look forward to? What kind of skills are needed? How can they pick up these jobs?
You see, I think we all know digitalization is not just Singapore. I think it's the whole world is experiencing that, right? Especially even across the region. We are one of the more advanced company, right? Even though I would like to say that we should also digitalize much faster than what we are doing. That gives us a advantage, a competitive edge over the region, right? But in terms of, you say, what kind of jobs there are, like I mentioned earlier about the open mindset, right? So if everybody is open to actually looking at being reskilled, retrained, or even upskilled, then I think we have a good future ahead. Right? So that's very important. The jobs that are available are actually, there are many. For example, in terms of looking, even in industry that I'm in the warehousing industry, right? You used to see very manual work, right? People picking cargo and all that kind of thing. Today, with digitalization, we are using actually some form of robots. But then you say, yeah, but robots replace jobs. No, robots make the jobs more sexy, number one, all right? It makes the job also, in a way, more productive, right? Productivity means that actually employer can pay their workers a bit more, right? Because of the productivity that's there. At the same time, I think with this, the companies are now having this better productivity. They are then able to sustain their business, and that means more jobs. So it's a very much a secure thing. There are many, many instances I can mention on that basis. The employees or the workers must be open to look at adopting this kind of a new skills to be able to become more relevant.
So let me give you one specific example again on sustainable energy. It's a sunrise industry. I think all of us can agree. So how have we worked with one of the associations, SEAS, Sustainable Energy Association of Singapore, I think. How did we work with them? So in this area, we are promoting solar technologies. In the past, there are technicians to just install panels. Now, with our career development plan, what is happening is that we map from a new joiner, whether it's a young graduate or mid-career, at initial training, all the way to a 10-year career, from $2,500 starting salary to $6,000, with different roles beyond installing, analysis, how do you actually set it up, the solar panel, the arrays, analyzing the electricity flows and things that I will probably need to be a bit updated too, but essentially developing a 10-year career possibility for Singaporeans. So therefore, in terms of job numbers, it goes up. In terms of jobs quality, it goes up. And hopefully in terms of business opportunities, well, if Singapore position ourselves as a sustainable energy hub, there are 630 million in Southeast Asia. Lots of energy needs.
Yep.
How can we partner the government? How can we partner the businesses with maybe EDB? Go overseas as well if we succeed. Then we'll be just limited by our own entrepreneur there and whether we are able to seize those opportunities.
Maybe I just like to add one thing on this. Everybody think that, oh, this is rocket science, digitalization. You know, how am I going to be a digital engineer here and there? Actually, it's not that. Having the mindset to embrace digitalization, right? Because when we go into a retraining or an upskilling program, we will actually teach all the people who are involved how to use digitalization. Not really just to design digitalization. That's a different group. Of course, there are groups that are doing that. So maybe the mindset of the general public is that, wow, they're very difficult because how do I go and do all this, right? You are not. But if you are digitally savvy, that means you know how to use all the gadgets. You know how to use mobile. You know how to use all the websites and all the different kind of application, so that you become digitally savvy and relevant. And in that, you are then very employable as you move along. You know, this is something that I think we have to change that mindset. Yeah.
So you come back at it, you have job creation, you got the job matching, and then now essentially what Robert is saying is that there's also job training. And none of us on our own can do it all. Whether it's individuals or NTUC, partnering each other, creating what we call the ecosystem just now.
Yep.
This is one of the methods we hope to push.
Okay, so thank you for sketching out this big strategy, this big picture. What is also on the viewers and the webinar participants' mind is, are you able to sketch out what are the sectors that are hiring, that are growing, and sectors that are not? So at least it helps them plan what to expect in 2021.
Yeah. Well, if I, just from my own surveillance of conversations with many business owners and tauke's, well, ICT, biotech, medtech, finance, land and transport, including logistics, is mixed, but overall trending should be good. Health, anything in the healthcare sector, I think in the next year should be good. Then the sectors that will still remain in the doldrums, I think, would be aviation, aerospace, which means the engineering companies that support aviation, hospitality, tourism, and hotels. So these are areas that I pay specific attention to in the survival and sustainability modes. Whereas in the other sectors I mentioned earlier, is really see how to recover and prosper mode.
Sik-Jen, what will you say to workers in these sectors that you mentioned? What will be your message to them? And what is NTUC doing to help these sectors either to ride this difficult period or move into the growth sectors that you mentioned earlier?
Well, at the worker level, the strategy really is to make our workers future-proof in the ways of either digitalization, keeping up with the technology essentially, but in other ways, upskilling our own ability to adapt. If you are a if you are a soundman, like my brother here filming us, can you go and diversify into other clustering job scopes that make you relevant to the company? Can you do more, be more productive, reduce the overall cost that a worker presents to the employer? and being that much more productive. So whether you are in a challenge sector or in a growth sector, I would say have a growth mindset regardless. I know the challenges are there. There are people around you that can help. There are union leaders, and of course there's NTUC. But once you accept that, go and really find what is relevant. If you are in a unionized company, we have the company training committees that actually pair up what Robert is saying with new business opportunities. What are the relevant causes that whether you're a technician or even a CEO, what can you actually go for to actually expand your own skill sets to be able to adapt to 2021 and beyond. So I don't know whether I have managed to crystallize this in a very concise manner because it's such a wide topic. It depends on whether you are a rank and file worker to a CEO. There are so many things that we can do together.
How about you, Dr. Yap? What would you say to companies who are in the growth sector, those that SecGen mentioned earlier, as well as those in the sector that will continue to face more difficulties next year?
Yeah, I think in the growth sectors, I think there are a couple of sectors that SecGen has mentioned. The main thing for the growth sector companies are that actually how do you get the right skills, basically the right skills to be able to support that growth. I think that's where for the workers looking for more sustainable job, for example, that's why I always emphasize the need, right, to remain open. Right? If they're open-minded, they adopt lifelong learning, willing to skill and reskill, I think there's no problem in Singaporean finding jobs. Okay? It's only their own stubbornness or their mentality of not wanting to change, right? Sticking on to old paradigm. If they are doing that, I think that's not a problem. And this also goes to companies, right? So certain companies are also sticking on to the old paradigm, and then they will get more and more challenged. There's a problem, right? But if companies are also far-sighted, there are so many schemes, right? The government actually has given so many schemes to help businesses transform, right? PCP program to enable you to build basically an army of skills that can actually help you to grow, right, in that transformation journey. So you have all that in place. So I believe that the major thing actually is mindset, both businesses as well as also the workers. Because important for us to be open. There are always businesses, but we cannot be sticking on and not trying to be flexible or agile. So agility is very important. Can we be agile and shift our skills to the area that is relevant? Yeah.
So maybe I give you two concrete examples because I think readers want to have certain examples they can grasp. So what we say about ICT, well, the unions, we have partnered the Singapore FinTech Association with our banking and financial services union. These two come together. So if you're looking for a job in finance with some touch of technology, well, get in touch with us. We'll see how we can put this together with MAS and afford new possibilities for the worker wanting to switch out or deepen your opportunities in an ICT and finance. For workers that may be in depressed sectors, well, if you are interested to pivot out into healthcare, we have our Health Services Employees Union. We have our own academy with all the relevant courses for you to adapt to the new situation. And in fact, let me give a word of assurance to all the viewers. Actually, many that are not in the healthcare sector have already been absorbed in stewardess that I know of, or partnering with our own union leaders to actually ease them into different areas of work in healthcare. So, well, I think those are the concrete examples I can give you beyond the macro things that Robert has been sharing. But as I said, earlier question, we must also take the personal step. I know it can be quite daunting and causes a lot of anxiety, but at least in Singapore, well, you have the government with you alongside, you have NTUC alongside, and you know, I don't know how many times I've met Robert to talk about different possibilities so that we can move forward together, including the PME task force that is just bilateral between SNEF and NTUC. How to embrace PMEs, especially the more vulnerable ones above the age of 40, with all the new world changing, with the marketplace behavior. How can we also look at the needs of PMEs? So the work on our table is large, and as we joked just now, I think he's not only getting white hair, but maybe losing hair as well.
We're going to come to the webinar participants' questions in a bit.
Yeah.
But before I do that, two questions. One, earlier you talked about this Queen Bee project. I mean, as a labour reporter, I've never heard of it before. Would you like to elaborate what is this new scheme?
You have mentioned it to the FEC, haven't you?
Correct, yeah. Actually, the Queen Bee is, you know, in every sector, there's always leaders, right, in those sectors. So what we are looking at is actually working with these leaders in the sectors, so the Queen Bee, to be able to pilot a lot of this transformation program that we have to attract employment, to set up for more sustainable business moving forward, right? So rather than trying to do everything, we want the Queen Bee to take the lead, right? Take the lead, and then after that, showcase, right, basically for the other members of the...
And into the second tier and third tier subcontractors, that a Queen Bee can influence new innovations, new digitalization on suppliers to the Queen Bee. So if it's a major company, then your subcontractors, can you actually, as a progressive employer, businessman, encourage your suppliers to go on this digital journey for you, with you? And then you can see that with each one 10, 10 百, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, that digitalization, the industry 4.0 potential actually can be sped up.
So you're looking for sort of like industry champion.
Correct.
Yes.
So as a viewer, as a reader, the logical question is, what does it mean for me in terms of job prospects or jobs availability?
So which means there will be jobs that will be created because of this Queen Bee that we are pushing.
Yep.
So the Queen Bee is in a way also being progressive. They are actually going to employ more than necessary because they are acting also in a way to employ for the entire sector.
Okay.
Right?
How many sectors are you looking at? How many Queen Bees?
I would say at least the retail sector that we're championing is doing that, but the Queen Bee come from different areas. Huh? For example, you have in the mall, you have CapitaLand Mall, then you have in the retailers, you have people like metros and actually the various sector. Talking about these retailers, you know, Robinson has closed shop. And Robinson closed shop actually has created even more wake-up call for our retail sector to transform even more quickly. So these are sometimes things that are timely for us to be able to push this initiative so that they can become more sustainable.
But what would motivate a company to take the lead to do a project that will benefit its rivals? What is in it for this Queen Bee?
It's actually, in a way, a first-to-market thing, all right? And also in a way of looking at good corporate social responsibility, all right? So all of us have to do our part to ensure that our sector, our country is able to progress from here, right? So actually for the Queen Bee, because there are a lot of grants, so the Queen Bee is not necessarily at a disadvantage to do that because the grants help to defray that. So when the grants finish, we hope that the curve, right, of the industry will grow, and then all the other second tier, like third tier, like saying, will need all these people. If we have not a Queen Bee to train them in advance, where are you going to get that skill? When it turns, you can't do. You can't do. You'll be losing those opportunities.
Besides retail, what are the other sectors you're looking at?
I would think that other sectors, of course, retail cross a lot. So including logistics is one of them, right? So logistic IT companies, there's also ICT we're talking about. So it's actually across all the various sectors we are talking about. So we are hoping actually to more that can be done, right? In terms of coming out with Queen Bee.
Do you have a timeline to roll this out? When are you ready to name these Queen Bees?
In fact, we are already moving with that.
Okay.
Right? We are already moving with that. So whether there's a big bang to name these people and glorify these people, I think that's not the whole objective. Our objective is to make sure that we can create jobs, right, very quickly. So under the NJC, like you mentioned, the National Job Council, chaired by PM Taman, we actually, on SNAP, actually is pushing this to create a number of jobs, quite a number of jobs, right? So to be able to allow people who are displaced to be able to come in on this job so that
when can public or job seekers hear of these Queen Bees being rolled out?
I think that's all in various platforms, many platforms, including the E2I and all that kind of thing. So if you are, I think NTUC has got also a lot of platform for people who are looking for jobs.
I think maybe I switch the mode of questions a little bit. Just like whether it's competition, well, at some level, the companies compete, maybe at a local level. But when you go overseas and find better businesses and scale the businesses, well, you may not really be competing, but you can come together as partners. That's one answer. The other thing about a queen bee, it doesn't mean that the queen bee is the monolithic entity in that sector. It is one important player with partners. So while I think the ecosystem innovation is happening in at least the retail logistics side, the specifics is not as if that what we are used to in the past. One key driver lists out all the different things clearly to you. Well, that is not really a startup mentality. And I know we are used to that in Singapore with a very clear strategy moving, and then these are the steps you can take. But I am afraid that this model will not be the best place for Singapore and our businesses in the next leap. Because when we started as a young country in the earlier years, we have models that we can look forward to copy and maybe do better. But today, we are at the forefront of many things. To push the boundary, but to yet have the certainty of all the things that you would like to be put on the table to assure, I think is not a equilibrium that we can achieve anymore. If we were to push boundaries, innovate, then we must deal with some levels of uncertainties. It comes back to my point, whether it's to employers or workers, the acceptance that the world have changed, to adapt to the new world, to adopt and to take necessary action. And sometimes, maybe I should add one more, to deal with the uncertainty and the anxiety as well. Because if we want a startup mentality, we want to seize new business opportunities, well, then I think a new equilibrium, especially how we approach and see the possibilities, might have to be different too. And our ability to change our mindset will have to be adjusted too. I think that's the best answer I can give you.
Okay, when can readers and viewers expect more details of this project that you're working on?
I think obviously, I think association members, I mean our members, SNAF, and also even the public, if they come up to SNAF Secretariat, we'll be able to point them to the places that is.
When will this be rolled? Early next year? Which part of next year?
Early next year there will be more, but we are already rolling up in
okay.
the rest sector. This is a very ongoing thing actually.
Okay. During the conversation earlier, you talked about tripartite cooperation and the three-way partnership among unions, employers, and the government.
Yes.
The government is not represented here, but would be your? Do you have any policy? I want to say budget. A little bit early for budget. Do you have any policy wish list for next year that you hope or you want to see that will hopefully turn the tide for employers and workers?
Well, at the worker level, targeted assistance, like what the government has announced in terms of driver relief fund, so on and so forth, that for the next 6 months at least, well, I think there are some depressed sectors that if we can extend targeted assistance, I think that will be very much appreciated. That's what NTUC has been working with government too, especially with Minister Ong Yi Kang in the driver relief fund, with Josephine in the manpower policies, with Chun Sing on the overall trade, and with DPM Heng Swee Kiat on the FEC. All these are constant conversations we continue to have to support workers. For the employers, well, I think, well, not to forget the job growth initiative is very important for the workers. But for the businesses, then how do we make sure that the health situation is comprehensively taken care of? Let's make sure that Singapore don't have a third wave of infections. How can we open up the doors for businesses to go overseas and for business travelers to come back to Singapore, anchoring our hub so that businesses, our GDP can go back up, you know, all the different wish lists. I have lots.
I think for employers, obviously I think the JSS has done us good, but there are certain sectors that are still very badly affected. Maybe one request for government to extend that, right, especially for some of these sectors. The other one, like what Brother Chime has mentioned, is the JGI. I think this is actually a very good incentive, encourage employer to be more positive, right, in actually employing people. I think this is something that we should encourage. And of course, there are also other schemes, and actually primary of them is the PCP programs that the conversion program. right? The professional conversion program, I think, is a very important part. In fact, not only should it be continue even more aggressive, it should actually be enhanced, right, to be able to take this through. So one of the key things that you see during this COVID and this survival situation is actually a lot of PCP program is helping to show a lot of companies to be able to continue to convert, continue to train people even under these circumstances. Yeah.
So let's hope more details of this wish list will come out as we head towards budget next year. I think it's time to take some questions from the webinar participants. We have one from Alison Tan. Okay, we're from Alison Tan. So Alison asked, I'm over 50 and was retrenched. Do I have to start all over in a new industry? So she gave some details. She was retrenched in October, currently looking for a job, found it hard because of her age, unable to find a position in the same role and industry. Then there was this worry that, if you move to a new industry, you've got to face challenges, new employers, new colleagues. So I think this must be in some of these retrenched workers' mind.
Yeah.
Do they have to join a new industry?
Which industry did she say?
It wasn't provided. Yeah.
You say she's above what?
50.
50
now.
over
Okay.
50.
Okay.
So this is a question from Alison. What do you say to someone like this?
Without the benefit of knowing which industry, then I'll just keep it a bit more generic. If the opportunities are no longer that optimistic in that industry, then I would say that pivot. When you pivot, Agnes, is it?
Alison.
Alison. Then I would suggest for Alison to come forward if she's in the unionized company, seek the advice of union leaders or NTUC to see where her skill sets may be relevant and minimize the different challenges that she may have to face. Very importantly, to have somebody alongside to be that counselor, to help you with resume, to tell you the ins and outs of the industry, to see whether it pairs with you or not. I think those will be at the personal level important ingredients to help the individual. We speak this with a certain level of experience because some folks during the circuit breaker came to NTUC to work, to be cashiers, to be on the aisles to restock, to do different things just to ensure that the 3-month period there is some form of livelihood. Were there anxious moments? Of course. Were there a lot of support that we try to put forward? The answer is yes too. So for Alison, 50, well, you still have useful years, and we do have the tripartite work group for senior workers as well. So we do work with employers to make sure that the marketplace bias against more senior workers are minimized. So all these things, I will try to assure Alison that, well, if you really need to step out, do approach NTUC, and we will see how we can match you to a new job that may be suitable for you. Maybe just let me give you one example. A significant resort in Singapore had a major retrenchment some time ago. When the retrenched workers came forward, on the very next week, NTUC E2I with our Job Security Council provided many of them with 3 options to go for interviews. And throughout that process, we have a good maybe 50% success rate of matching workers into different industries. Some, because of the retrenchment package, maybe can take a longer time to look for a new job. They may want to stay in the entertainment industry, but others have pivoted out. So it really is different strokes for different preferences. But should you want to pivot, there should be available resources to help you. Importantly, also hopefully a union leader on the ground to assist you in the process.
So in the course of my work as a labour reporter, we hear feedback from the difficulties that older workers face
Yes.
in looking for a new job. So one difficulty that always comes back is the lack of skills and the lack of opportunities, and sometimes not being able to fit into what the employer has in mind. As an employer, Dr. Yap, what will you do what will you say that employers can do to help the older workers who are moving into a new sector?
Yeah, I think very good question. I think even for existing employer, we also have workers that are aging as we go, right? So we do not want also our aging workers to be disadvantaged as we go. So what we do is that we are constantly looking at how we can change our workplace. We transform our workplace in a way that the older workers are not disadvantaged. For example, I give you an example. Like we do fulfillment, right? So a lot of this type of fulfillment means you go and pick thousands of orders here and there. The normal way of doing it is that you take your pick order and then you run around the warehouse to pick, right? So all the kind of batching that you do. We have actually implemented what we call a goods to man system. That means that actually robots will go around, bring the whole entire shelf to you. And then that person sitting there will be able then to pick with the light system pointing out. So what effectively makes that happen is that the worker over there now can actually work much longer. They're not at a disadvantage against a younger worker anymore. So this is the kind of thing that we do. So we are encouraging on a more holistic basis, is trying to see how more employers can come forward. And there are government grants to help that also, to ensure that you can transform your workplace to be more age-friendly and so on. So these are the areas that I thought the employers can do their part. Yeah.
Just let me assure, if there are employers watching this,
Yep.
the government enterprise development grant subsidizes up to 80% of capital costs of
Correct.
upping your technology. And if the union work with you and their worker benefits, up to 90% of subsidies. So the changing of the workspace is not as daunting to the employer as well. And then for the workers, well, courses can be subsidized to 90% for you to actually pivot.
Right. We have a related follow-up question from an ST reader, there's no name. So the question is, what is the employment outlook for PMEs above 60 years old? So Alison was above 50, this reader is above 60, PME, more specific. And the question to NTUC is, what is NTUC doing to help these older workers for the newer jobs, the newer PME jobs, I presume?
Well, I think there are two parts to my answer. One is the personal expectations. And the other is the question of what NTUC can do. So personal expectations, I think at a certain level must be adjusted. You know, I'm a football fan. The career of a footballer up to 35 is a long career. And in Singapore, the retirement age is 62, moving upwards. Hopefully, re-employment age will start only at 65 in the next 10 years. But nevertheless, at whichever part, we must expect that there will be a peak in our earnings, and thereafter we will have to adjust our expectations. I think that must be something that individuals must grapple with. That one, I will have no solution except to persuade. On the NTUC side, we actually work with Manpower Ministry and with Robert Snaith to come up with fair practices for senior workers. Whether it is CPF payment, whether it is extension of retirement age to 65 and re-employment age to 70, these are the macro things to create the environment for senior workers like this reader to have opportunities. Then coming into the marketplace, I will say that the marketplace is there's still work to be done against the perceptions that older workers are definitely less productive. Well, my personal opinion is that, well, indeed, some older workers, if they don't stay up with technology and don't have good employers that can actually redesign workplaces, then if you need too much muscle power, then, well, there will be disadvantages. Yeah. But if we are able to up technology, like even NTUC FairPrice, you know, when Robert was telling about his warehouse, how it's automated, if you come to NTUC FairPrice in our warehouse, you see literally few tens or hundreds of robots going around, picking up different goods for you when you order online. So whether you are a younger worker or an older worker, the key thing is about learning how to do the programming, how to monitor the process, not so much the manual work anymore. In the airport, when it was still a thriving small metropolis in Changi, we worked with SATs to see how we can automate the cooking and the transport of food into aircraft, even baggage into aircraft cargo holds, so that the manual labor is less on the older worker. One key one that most Singaporeans will have seen, in the old days where we have all the trolleys that we use, maybe 3 or 4 older gentlemen will have to push all the trolleys. Now you have one. Automated in the sense that there's a machine that he rides on, pull every trolley in. 4 into 1. Is it more productive? Yes. Can we pay the older worker more? The answer is yes. Is the company happy with the productivity growth? Yes. So the real answer is that the worker must create the productivity growth so that the company can see that it is not a cost center but a productive center. When those two interests are aligned, then we can solve the problem. And that is the strategy that NTUC uses in our tripartite arrangements to make sure that the companies can up-capitalize in technology, retrain our workers in partnership with them so that the ecosystem benefits.
So would it be fair to say that job transformation is the key to
Job redesign.
redesign?
Yes.
Okay, it's the key.
Not necessarily the whole transformation.
Okay, job is the key to ensuring that the older workers
Absolutely.
remain employable.
Absolutely.
Then how do you trigger or encourage this job redesign?
Well, in the public sector, many are taking the lead. In the hospitals, a person, not even an older worker, a younger one, a receptionist, used to be single job focus. In the healthcare industry, together with my union sister, Tanan Nashmi, we actually expanded receptionist skills into taking pulse, ECG for the more advanced, so that she can contribute more and release the nurses into other areas of deeper expertise. So you have all examples dotting different places that we can actually come together to do job redesign. I've given you the solar technologies.
Then what do you say to an older worker who says, I'm really ready to do any redesign job, but employers are not doing it, I'm not getting the opportunity? What would you say to someone who says something like that?
Don't give up. Don't give up.
Yes.
Don't give up. There are good employers out there. There are employers that are not changing the business model yet.
Okay.
I think over time there will be enough good employers that are pivoting the businesses for us to actually create opportunities.
Okay.
It will not be an easy journey. I would make sure I say that. It will not be an easy journey for 60-plus-year-old PME. But will there be opportunities if we adjust our expectations and work together with SNEF and NTUC? I would say that, well, you have an even chance.
Okay, what if I push this a bit further? So me, this worker, I'm ready to do this job when you redesign it. Employers are not doing it. Can the government, in a way, force employers to do it?
Then you must invite Josephine to...
No, I think that's also the other part. I think we have encouraged our people to adopt lifelong learning. So as long as you're lifelong learning alert, I think that's one thing. For example, in our industry, right, I just had people who are now 67, 68 years old. So what they want to continue to work. But because of their expertise, we are using them to do coaching, mentoring in the skills training academy. Imagine how useful they can to people who are entering the industry. So there are actually many kind of jobs that the older person can do.
Yeah.
But the ability to stay positive and keep on learning, I think is important. Yeah.
Well, Gardens by the Bay, one of my favorite places. I know of people that are 70-plus years old thriving as workers, having very good relations with the management, feeling energized at the workplace. All these are all possibilities. But jokes aside, on the last question, what can the government do? Can it be forced? Well, I would say no. In the short term, 3 months, 6 months, Robert and other businessmen may have no options, but when it is unsustainable, they can easily move the companies out. And the ecosystem, instead of a virtuous progress will lead to a vicious cycle where businesses will vacate. So I would caution against saying that the government come in with a big hand. We will support both from government, I think, and unions to support the businesses to create the thriving ecosystem that must guarantee a three-win situation where the country wins, the businesses win, and the workers win.
Yep.
Causing the businesses to lose for the workers to benefit, I don't think would be the wise way, nor the sustainable way forward.
Okay, that's sobering.
That's it.
We have a question from another reader on the aviation sector. So the question is, can NTUC work with government to continue the job support scheme, especially for aviation sector? I think it's one of those that you mentioned is remains depressed.
Yes, the answer is a simple yes, we can work with government, but it also depends on the overall government budget situation, which I would defer to MOF, because there are great challenges in the way ahead. The government has put up a $100 billion package already, and I would say that just on open literature possibilities, the tax revenues that government has forgiven or across different areas, well, I think MOF side will have also due considerations. I would say, how can we actually scope down to be more focused for those sectors that really, really need the help, and it cannot be on an open-end basis.
Will NTUC or Employer Federation put up some specific proposals for the depressed sectors?
Well, we are in constant discussion with our government colleagues.
Okay. With a question on related to 2021 employment outlook, but this reader asks for what is the future for locals and foreigners with regards to employment next year and beyond, and specifically because the numbers show that foreigners bore the brunt of the jobs market this year, right? Mm-hmm. And now that they've created these vacancies, what are the plans to ensure that Singaporeans can fill these vacancies and not just fill, able to do these jobs that have been vacated by the departing foreigners?
Well, that's a very good question. In fact, NTUC took specific steps to protect the Singaporean core in the fair retrenchment framework, in consultation with our business partners, and government adopted this into a tripartite advisory. Well, let's look at it this way. How can we welcome foreign talents to augment our workforce? When we come from that basis, it means that when there's wealth created in Singapore, the first beneficiaries should be to Singaporeans, whether it is businessmen or to the workers. If that is the founding principle of why we do things in Singapore the way we do it, well, then the rest of the policy making can follow suit. So, can Singapore do without foreigners? I think the answer is quite clear. I don't mean just the lower end work. It also comes from the highest levels of talent to inject the vibrancy and the robustness of our business. So I would say that for the workers, well, our Ministry of Education must continue to be world-class, to prepare our kids in the best way for the future. We must continue to innovate skills future on the personal level to also the enterprise level, riding on initiatives and innovations like NTUC's company training committees to merge different interests so that businesses and workers are aligned. Moving in tandem in this way, I think will give us the best chance to succeed beyond 2021. And if you again look at job opportunities once they are created, whether it is the SG United, whether it's JGI, is actually Singaporean focused. First call of JGI, first call, in fact the policy planning is around the Singaporean. But what is not helpful and can be toxic to our overall well-being is that when we reject foreigners, whether it is on the individual scale or the macro scale, Because with 3.7 million Singaporeans running a $500 billion economy, we simply do not have enough Singaporeans. How can we design to bring foreigners in with our employment policies? How can we actually ensure that Singaporeans are world-class, topped up with the most relevant skills? I think all those are relevant strategies in each of our government spheres to enable the Singaporean to take on the challenges. With a very important word for me as SecGen NTUC as well, there are also individual responsibilities for us to keep updated, to have the nimble mindset so that we can be the most productive in the world, so that our businesses can thrive.
Yeah.
Talking what are
I
employers'
totally
views?
concur with SecGen. I think you look at Singapore's situation, we definitely need foreign skills, right? Over time, obviously, we can look at some even more the critical skills, even the higher end. We look at how to actually embed them through a transfer of skills to our local, right? So we bring in, let's say, Kung Fu masters, I call them. You bring them in, right? For a number of years, they must be able to transfer those skills to your local people. So I think these are kind of things that we can always do that. But bearing in mind that if you are continuing open and to attract the best companies of the world to come in here, you have to keep that policy open. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult for us to continue to attract because talent is actually global, right, in the sense. So I think what I feel that is important is for us to continue to do that, to show that we can actually continue to upgrade our people and also to encourage more local giants to grow, right? Because local companies, like most of the local companies I know, would actually inevitably are more Singaporean core than anything else. So I think this is a very important part. Not core just at a general, but also in their higher level of management. So I think that's one other thing. So if you have more strong Singapore companies that are global, I think that Singaporean core become even stronger, even at the higher end, against all the other multinational companies.
But even Robert, MNCs, Shell, Miss Au Gao Peng, a friend of mine, is now the head woman
Chairman,
of Shell.
that's right.
ExxonMobil is also a Singaporean, Geraldine. These are friends of the labour movement. These are Singaporeans actually haven't risen to the top. So if we have the necessary talent in Singapore to push, then definitely the government, NTUC and our employers will push. But we must also recognize that 3.7 million people, nearly impossible, I wouldn't say never, to outcompete 6 billion or 7 billion talents around the world.
Yep.
So this is a natural follow-up question. Talk about talent, right? So the reader or the audience, Fong Yong Kiong, asked, what can companies do to retain talents in the COVID-hit sectors? Because the worry is that in the COVID sector, you're shedding people, losing jobs. So what can companies do to retain those talent? And related to that is what you mentioned earlier. How do you speed up the localization of the workforce and make it sustainable beyond this immediate pandemic?
Yeah.
Well, I have a relevant example, but I don't think I should quote the company nor the CEO, but it is a foreign company, MNC. The CEO is a foreigner, but he has been in touch with NTUC to see how we can preserve local capabilities in a depressed sector. It's in the aerospace sector. So the proposals could be that can they second engineers and technicians when this 2 or 3 year down period into other sectors that may have a better projection, with a caveat that every month let the engineer or technician come back to stay in touch, keep current. And there must be some arrangements therefore to share the wage and so on and so forth. Well, not quite a queen bee concept, but this is the
Almost like a surrogate concept actually.
surrogate employer concept.
Yeah.
So these are responsible employers, not necessarily Singaporean companies that are wanting to keep local capabilities. I think partly because of their own company interests, but also really leaning forward to preserve local capabilities for Singaporeans as well. How challenging it is? Well, we are working through many details. I don't know whether you will succeed yet, but it is certainly one innovation we are willing to try. Surrogate employer, that need Singaporean workers, convert maybe, like what Robert says, with a top-up from aviation engineering to some form of mechanical engineering, keep in the job 2 years, when the industry picks up, go back in.
Yep.
Look at Singapore Airlines. Pilots that I've worked with, some have gone into the dorms to be health ambassadors to do swipe. Some stewardess have gone into our hospitals to work the healthcare industry. All these are on a common basis. In fact, I met 2 stewardess in downtown East just the other night. They were very happy to see me. I was very happy to meet them. They were taking the permission from SQ to do part-time work in downtown East, NTUC's club, where they are working, I think, on a Friday night or something like that, to actually bring their expertise, their service-friendly attitude into a new restaurant to train up other staff. So is it win-win-win? I would say yes. How scalable? Well, we work hard at it.
So these companies want to retain the staff,
Yes.
except that can't hire them during this period.
Yes.
Okay.
So let me finish when the stewardess have a flight, then the SQ will call them up, they will go back to their career, fly, and on free time again, come back to the restaurant.
This approach, is it consistent with how the employers in the depressed sectors generally feel?
You see, especially in those with special skills, right? So if you have a special skills group of people, you don't want to lose them, right? Because under the case that where you are barely hit, you cannot afford to employ them. But those skills, when that sector return, you will need those skills, right? So a kind of a example like what Brother Chime has mentioned is actually very useful for that, because you are maintaining those skilled people, right? Allow them to go into certain sectors, but holding a hand so that they will come back when the sector return. Right? Some of these sectors will definitely return. It's just a matter of time again. But it's just that it'll be longer than normal because they are hit quite badly. Yeah.
So we've so far talked about workers who've lost their jobs in the COVID pandemic. We have a question from Jessica. This relates to workers who lost their jobs before the pandemic. So Jessica asks, my friend was let go before COVID-19, still unemployed. How can he get help? Some details. Is above 40, looking for a marketing position in raw materials industry. And I think this reflects the worry of people who
Indeed.
already found it hard
Indeed.
before COVID. So what do you say how will you respond to this question?
Well, at 2 levels. One, the immediate assistance, come forward, contact NTUC E2I. We have a job security council. There are PME jobs available. We may require some top-up skills or pivoting, as we have discussed. That's the immediate solution. The longer-term thing that we're looking at, as I mentioned to you, is to really address the issues raised. We set up a PME task force so that we can better understand the challenges of the 40-year-old and above.
Yep.
How can we actually think through whether it is employer or union level, things that we can do better, or influence government policies with a submission of recommendations to government, hopefully sometime in 2021 towards the end, after we have studied the problem, in conjunction with PMEs that are willing to step forward to tell us what are they facing. So maybe I do a pitch here, if you don't mind. Well, PMEs do come forward when the PME task force calls you, because we are doing an outreach program to solicit views, possibilities, things that we've not thought about, to actually put together a rethink of actually NTUC only perceived to help the rank and file folks. But actually NTUC has already pivoted and innovated to help workers of all colours.
What do you say to some readers or viewers who say those who lose their jobs before COVID pandemic, and because it is before pandemic, it wasn't directly related to pandemic, and they therefore fall out of the assistance schemes?
Well, then look out. If you need assistance to the Ministry of Social and Family, there are other support levels that are there for you. Yeah, and whether you are a freelancer, whether you are employee previously, well, Singapore has always been one society that we want to bring everybody along. If you are in need, you can also go see your MP. They will be able to help as well. Yes, I have been there before. I understand the needs of some of these workers. I fully empathize with the anxieties. Step forward, there will be people there alongside you. Just don't hang out only in your own room and worry. Please reach out to your local community or to NTUC or to the ministry, MSF.
I think for this group of workers that are misplaced, I think the PCP program, when it was originally configured, was for that purpose, to pivot workers into other industries, right, where they could be out of job in their own industry, whether it's marketing, sales job, or any other customer service, whatever it is. If they are trained and pivot using their marketing skills still into another industry, using the PCP program to help them convert. So they were the marketing expertise, they need the PCP program where they put content into them. That means you fast track them learning over the next 9 months. They'll be as good as any marketing people in that industry.
Professional conversion.
So the individual must not be afraid. Oh no, but the industry I do not know anything about. That's exactly what the PCP is trying to do. Convert you so that you are relevant in that industry.
So you keep the skills, but move to another sector.
Exactly.
Okay.
That is more promising, right?
Or acquire new skills also, building on the foundation of skills.
Of course, yeah.
We probably have time for one or two more questions. We have one from Kok Liang Chiu, who asks about workplace discrimination. So the question is, isn't it more important now to consider workplace discrimination law? Presumably because during this difficult time where it's an employer's market, more job seekers than available jobs, and there's this higher likelihood that there could be more discrimination, if at all. So the question is, isn't it more important now to consider workplace discrimination laws?
Well, it has always been important. So that's why we have TAFEP and TADEM for fair employment practices, to have a tribunal for arbitration. So that area, no matter how good a system is set up, there will always be such practices, unfortunately, in the marketplace. And this mechanism has already been set up, run by tripartite partners. So yes, I agree with the reader.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is something that I think from a tripartite basis we are all very seriously ensuring that our workplace do not have this kind of a situation, right? But against the context of wanting to make it law, we already have a lot of initiatives. The TADEM, the TAFEP, these are all very strong initiatives that we put in place, and this initiative have shown that it's actually handling it actually well. So from the employer's perspective is that we like a bit more of the labor and market flexibility. So if everything is law, it becomes like very adversarial. This cannot, this can, this cannot. So having a kind of a best practices helps also to promote the relationship, right, between the unions, the employees, and also the employer, rather than strict and first law. Because I feel that for this part of it, I think we have many laws, right? Many laws, but laws make it very adversarial at the end of the day. It's just you hit this, either this or that, right? So we do not want to have laws to be sort of creating a bit of a inflexibility, because there must be good give and take between the employer and employee. And on top of it, there are a lot of these situations in the marketplace which are being handled. TAFEP and TAFEP actually did a great job. If you look at the amount of complaints, actually it has been coming down, except for this COVID situation, is because of the COVID situation, because I think that is not a way to compare it. So I don't think there's a need to have very rigid law, but we must understand the principles that we need to respect this in the workplace.
Have the union leaders on the ground picked up more feedback about discrimination, or hear more of this during this difficult labour market period?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Not that I know of. In the last 10 months, our focus really was in the job support, the job matching and job training. In terms of job advocacy, we have always been working hard to ensure that lower wage workers are taken care of. Even year-end bonus, you can see our women having access to flexible work arrangements to handle the many responsibilities. The senior worker questions, Heng Chi Hao, my deputy and SMS in MINDEF, actually set up this tripartite advisory to make sure that older workers are taken care of, and also in building some flexibility like CPF payment, the exact timing for the businesses to move, all those. We have done many of these things to protect workers, job advocacy. And in one area that we think we need to do more, the 40-year-old and above in the PME, we are going to come into this space to see how we can help. You mentioned, Yong Chuan, about the freelancers. In the last 2 years since I've been in NTUC, we have looked at, we have set up 4 freelancers associations so that we can help the freelancers as well. And I think I mentioned about even in the SME sector, where traditionally there are less unionized companies, we are innovating to bring relevance to the employers, so that employers will partner us to outreach to the workers in a win-win situation, that employers don't look at us as adversaries, but as partners to create better business and then look after the workers.
But probably something that we should have to continue watch over, right?
Definitely.
Make sure that discrimination doesn't creep in.
Well, I think in any society, we will have to guard against discrimination.
Okay. I'm going to take one more question from Serena Tan. So Serena asks, will there be more opportunities for upskilling programs? And her feedback is that there are too many people signing up for PCPs, and because they are over demand, not everyone who sign will get it, and some are not accepted. So she asked whether there will be more opportunities for upskilling programs, especially in the fields where there's over demand.
Well, I would say that in the skills future, a person that is above 40, my age, I have $1,500 from the government in terms of skills future support, and NTUC, if you're above 40, another $500. So $2,000 in many of the SSG and WSG courses that are heavily subsidized. So the short answer is yes. I think there are opportunities for a worker to tap on all this to enable individual level learning. In the companies, actually, many of the unionized companies work with the company training committees that NTUC set up. And those courses are mostly job related and likely to be paid for by the company. So the answer in that working space is also yes, there should be. On the PCP point, I'm not, I need to check on the statistics. I think the Ministry of Manpower would want very much to take in the people that meet the criteria for PCP, because that is one strategy that government has put in place to enable workers of all colours to actually move across to different places. And it has been quite successful.
Yeah, actually very successful.
So I'm quite surprised that...
Yeah, when you mention this is because in the PCP, you need job matching. So you need to have an employer that's willing to take you to the conversion program. So sometimes employers and employees, not necessarily they will like each other on that basis. So in the way that we are doing it, we actually sometimes help this particular employee to be able to write their resume properly and then make that match. So the employer will say, okay, this is the person that I want. And vice versa, even for the employer. Because this is all about matching. At the end, if you don't match, the PCP program cannot be activated. So that's one of the critical issues. Maybe it's because of that. They cannot find a suitable employer on that basis.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up this webinar. So thank you for coming. But before I wrap up, we are coming to the end of what is really a horrible year, year-end coming. So I'm going to ask both gentlemen, do you have any Christmas or year-end wish as we wrap up this year? I'll start with Sec Gen.
Well, a healthier year ahead for all, and a recovering economy for all our taukes and all our workers. And finally, to all the Christians, well, may the peace of God be with all of you in Christmas, during the Christmas season.
Okay, Dr. Yap.
Yeah, I think this is a time to really remember, like what you said, the horrible time, so that it can be a reflection of what we should do better, right, for the year ahead. I think I wish that this vaccination program that will work wonders for us, I hope, and ensure that as we move on to the next year, right, situation become more amenable, and our people and our companies continue to look forward positively to upgrade, and also to be taking the advantage and the challenges head on, to be able to position ourselves better. So with that, I hope everybody has a safe Christmas and a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Yeah.
Okay. So let me thank ST readers and viewers for staying with us for this webinar. And if you have any questions that we have not answered, you're welcome to email us, and we'll try to address them in other forums. So thank you once again, and thank you for participating in this webinar.
Thank you, Yang Chuan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you. Thanks, brother.